Hashtag the moment everything changed. Money can buy many things. It can buy cars, houses, and even people's silence. But there is one thing money cannot buy, no matter how many billions sit in a bank account. It cannot buy the right to crush someone's spirit. It cannot purchase permission to strip away human dignity. And on a cold Tuesday evening in Manhattan, one of the richest men in America was about to learn this lesson from the most unexpected teacher. Marcus Wellington had built an empire. His name appeared on buildings, his face graced magazine covers, and his opinions moved stock markets. At 62 years old, he had spent 4 decades believing that wealth equaled worth, that his bank balance gave him authority over anyone who earned less. He had reduced assistants to tears, humiliated business partners in boardrooms, and left a trail of broken spirits wherever his $1,000 shoes walked. Everyone bent to his will. Everyone stayed silent. Everyone accepted that this was simply how powerful men behaved. Everyone except Maya Richardson. She was 28 years old, working double shifts at an upscale restaurant to support her younger brother's college education. She had seen difficult customers before, had swallowed her pride countless times, had smiled through insults that would make most people walk away. But on this particular evening, something was different. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the memory of her grandmother's words about standing tall. Or maybe it was simply that every human being has a breaking point, a moment when silence becomes more painful than speaking up. What happened in that restaurant over the course of 3 hours would be recorded on security cameras, witnessed by dozens of diners, and eventually spark a national conversation. It would cost some people everything they thought defined them. It would give others something they had lost long ago. And it would prove that courage does not require a fortune, a title, or permission from anyone. This is the story of what happens when dignity meets arrogance, when quiet strength faces loud power, and when one woman's decision to stand up changes more lives than she could ever imagine. This is the true story of the night Maya Richardson said enough. The rain had been falling steadily since noon, turning the streets of Manhattan into rivers of reflected neon and blurred headlights. Inside La Lumiere, one of the city's most exclusive restaurants, the atmosphere remained untouched by the weather outside. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light across white tablecloths, soft classical music floated through the air, and the scent of expensive wine and perfectly prepared food created an environment where money felt comfortable. Maya Richardson moved between tables with practiced grace, her black uniform pressed crisp despite being 6 hours into her shift. She had worked at La Lumiere for 3 years, long enough to recognize the different types of wealthy customers who walked through the heavy oak doors. There were the kind ones who treated service staff like human beings, tipping generously and making polite conversation. There were the indifferent ones who barely acknowledged her existence, seeing her as part of the furniture. And then there were the others, the ones who seemed to believe that paying for an expensive meal gave them ownership over the people serving it. Marcus Wellington belonged firmly to the third category, though Maya did not know his name yet when he walked in at 7:30 that evening. She noticed him immediately, not because of any special quality but because his presence seemed to demand attention. He was tall, with silver hair styled perfectly despite the rain, wearing a suit that probably cost more than she earned in 6 months. 2 other men followed him, younger, wearing expressions that suggested they would rather be anywhere else. The restaurant manager, Gerald, practically sprinted across the floor to greet them. Maya watched as Gerald bowed slightly, something she had never seen him do for any other customer. The 3 men were led to the best table in the house, positioned by the window with a view of the glittering city beyond. Other diners glanced over, some whispering to their companions. Whoever this man was, he clearly mattered in the world these people inhabited. Maya was assigned to their section. She took a breath, put on her professional smile, and approached the table with menus. Before she could speak, Marcus Wellington held up one hand without looking at her, continuing his conversation with the 2 men as if she did not exist. She stood there, holding the menus, waiting. 1 minute passed. Then 2. The men talked about stock prices and merger opportunities while Maya remained invisible. Finally, Marcus glanced up at her with eyes that held no warmth, no recognition of her as a person. He looked at her the way someone might look at a piece of machinery that had made an unwanted noise. "Water," he said, not asked. Room temperature. Not cold. I don't want ice cubes touching my glass. And make sure the bottle is new, unopened in front of me. I don't trust what comes from your kitchen. Maya nodded, keeping her expression neutral. Of course, sir. And for the other gentlemen? They'll have whatever I'm having, Marcus said, cutting her off. I don't have time for individual orders. Bring 3 bottles. He turned back to his companions without another word. She walked to the server station, where her co-worker Jennifer was preparing drinks for another table. Let me guess, Jennifer said quietly. The silver-haired man at table 7? How did you know? That's Marcus Wellington. He comes in every few months. Every server dreads it. Last time he was here, he made Christina cry because there was a water spot on his wine glass. Gerald had to comp his entire meal just to stop him from causing a scene. Maya felt something tighten in her chest. She had dealt with difficult customers before, but something about the casual cruelty in Marcus Wellington's eyes bothered her more than usual. Still, she needed this job. Her brother Jamal was in his 3rd year at college, studying engineering. Their parents had died in a car accident 5 years ago, and Maya had promised herself, that Jamal would get the education they had always wanted for him. Every shift mattered. Every tip counted. She returned to the table with 3 bottles of imported water, opening each one in front of Marcus as requested. He did not acknowledge her effort. Instead, he was berating one of the younger men about a failed business deal. I don't pay you to make excuses, Richard. I pay you to get results. If you can't handle simple negotiations, maybe you should go work at a coffee shop where the stakes are more your speed. Richard's face had turned red. He stared at his empty plate, jaw clenched. The other young man looked equally uncomfortable, but said nothing. Maya poured the water into 3 glasses, making sure not a single drop spilled. Are you ready to order, or would you like a few more minutes with the menu? Marcus finally looked at the menu, his expression suggesting it personally offended him. What's the most expensive steak you have? The Wagyu ribeye, sir. 16 ounces, served with, I don't need the whole speech. Bring me that, medium rare. If it comes out medium or rare, I'm sending it back, and you won't be getting paid for it. Understand. Maya felt her professional smile falter for just a second. Sir, I don't prepare the food. Our chef has been. I don't care about your excuses before I've even eaten. Just bring the steak. And tell whoever is back there that I have standards. He waved his hand dismissively. These 2 will have the same thing. She wrote down the order, her pen pressing perhaps a bit harder than necessary into her notepad. As she turned to leave, Marcus called out, and send someone else to check on us. I prefer servers who don't ask unnecessary questions. The words hit her like a slap. She kept walking, head high, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing her upset. In the kitchen, she handed the order to the chef, Marcus, a 50-year-old man from France who took enormous pride in his work. When she mentioned the customer's warning about the steak temperature, Chef Marcus's eyebrows rose. Who is this customer who threatens my kitchen? Marcus Wellington, apparently. He's some billionaire. Chef Marcus made a dismissive sound. Money does not make taste buds. I will cook his steak perfectly, as I cook all steaks. If he does not like it, the problem is his palate, not my cooking. Despite her frustration, Maya smiled. There was something comforting about the chef's unshakable confidence. She returned to her other tables, serving an elderly couple celebrating their anniversary, bringing extra bread to a family with 2 young children, making sure everyone had what they needed. This was the part of the job she loved, making people's evenings special, being part of their celebrations and conversations. But Table 7 cast a shadow over the entire section. Every time she glanced over, Marcus Wellington was criticizing someone. He spoke loudly enough that nearby tables could hear, seemingly unconcerned about who witnessed his behavior. He criticized Richard's choice of university, mocked the other man's recent presentation to investors, and complained about the temperature of the room, the music selection, and the speed of service even though his food had not yet arrived. Gerald, the manager, hovered nearby, his anxiety visible. He approached Maya during a quiet moment. How is Table 7 doing? He asked for a different server, Maya said flatly. Gerald winced. I can't switch you out. We're fully booked, and everyone's section is full. Just do your best to keep him happy. Mr. Wellington is very influential. He knows the owner personally. He's rude to everyone, Gerald. He threatened to not pay for his meal if the steak isn't cooked exactly how he wants it. Just bring everything perfectly and smile. That's all we can do. Gerald patted her shoulder awkwardly and hurried away to greet new arrivals. Maya felt frustration building in her chest. She thought about her grandmother, who had raised her and Jamal after their parents died. Grandma Rose had worked as a housekeeper for wealthy families her entire life. She had endured dismissive comments, unfair treatment, and casual racism with grace and dignity. But she had also taught Maya an important lesson during one of their last conversations before cancer took her. "Baby," Grandma Rose had said, her voice weak but firm, "there's a difference between being professional and letting people walk on your soul. You can be respectful without being a doormat. Don't ever let anyone make you feel less than what you are." The kitchen bell rang. Chef Marcus had prepared the 3 Wagyu steaks with meticulous care, each one cooked to absolute perfection. The plates looked like art, garnished beautifully, the meat glistening. Maya loaded them onto a tray and carried them carefully through the crowded restaurant. She placed the first plate in front of Marcus Wellington. He did not thank her. Instead, he immediately cut into the steak, examined it with a critical eye, and took a bite. For a moment, she thought perhaps the food would satisfy him. Then, his expression soured. "This is medium, not medium rare." Maya looked at the steak. Even from where she stood, she could see the perfectly pink center. "Sir, that appears to be. Are you arguing with me about what I'm eating?" Marcus's voice rose, drawing attention from surrounding tables. "I know what medium rare looks like. This is overcooked. Take it back." "Of course, sir." Maya reached for the plate. "And tell your chef that if he can't cook a simple steak, maybe he should work at a diner instead of a restaurant like this." The insult to Chef Marcus made her anger spike, but she controlled it. She brought the plate back to the kitchen. Chef Marcus examined it, his face darkening. "This is perfect medium rare." "Perfect. The man is wrong. Can you make another one?" Maya asked quietly. Chef Marcus looked at her, then at the steak, then sighed. "Yes, I will make another. But this is not right. This man insults my work for no reason." While the second steak cooked, Maya returned to check on her other tables. The elderly couple asked if she was all right, noting that she seemed stressed. Their kindness nearly brought tears to her eyes. She assured them she was fine and refreshed their wine glasses. The second steak came out even more perfect than the first. Maya brought it to Marcus Wellington, placing it carefully in front of him. This time, he cut into it, examined it, and put his fork down. "Now it's too rare. What is wrong with your kitchen?" He pushed the plate away. "I want to speak to the manager. This is unacceptable." Maya felt something shift inside her. This was not about the steak. This was about power, about a man who enjoyed making others scramble to please him. She had seen this before, but never quite so blatantly. "I'll get him for you, sir," she said, her voice steady. She found Gerald near the entrance. His face fell when she explained the situation. Both steaks were sent back. Both were cooked perfectly. Chef Marcus confirmed it. "This customer is just looking for problems." Gerald rubbed his forehead. "I'll talk to him. Just stay away from the table for now." Maya watched as Gerald approached Marcus Wellington with the posture of someone walking toward an executioner. The conversation was brief. Marcus did most of the talking, his hands gesturing dramatically. Gerald nodded repeatedly, apologizing, promising to fix everything. Finally, Gerald retreated and went straight to the kitchen. 5 minutes later, a third steak emerged. Gerald carried this one himself. Maya watched from a distance as he placed it in front of Marcus, who barely glanced at it before cutting into it. This time, miraculously, it met his approval. He began eating without thanking Gerald. The rest of the meal continued in similar fashion. Marcus sent back his side vegetables because they were too green, whatever that meant. He complained that his water glass was refilled too frequently, then complained it was not refilled enough. He snapped his fingers at Maya when he wanted her attention, even though she had asked him twice to please just raise his hand if he needed something. The 2 younger men with him ate in miserable silence. Richard's steak sat half-finished, as if he had lost his appetite. The other man kept checking his watch, clearly counting the minutes until this dinner would end. Other diners in the restaurant had noticed the commotion. Maya caught sympathetic looks from some, curious stares from others. One woman at a nearby table leaned over during a quiet moment and whispered, "You're handling that beautifully." I would have dumped water on his head by now. Maya managed a weak smile, but inside she felt exhausted. The shift was supposed to end at 10, but with Marcus Wellington taking his time, criticizing every course, sending back items for invented reasons, she knew she would be here much later. And Jamal was expecting her to call him tonight to discuss his upcoming exams. Dessert arrived. 3 pieces of the restaurant's signature chocolate souffle, each one a masterpiece of pastry art. Maya placed them on the table, knowing what was coming before Marcus even tasted his. "This is too sweet," he announced after one bite. "Does your pastry chef not understand balance? This tastes like something from a grocery store bakery." That was the final straw for Richard. The young man suddenly stood up, throwing his napkin on the table. "I can't do this anymore, Marcus. I quit. Find someone else to abuse." He walked out of the restaurant without looking back. Marcus watched him go with an expression of contempt. "Weak," he muttered. "That's the problem with this generation. No backbone." He turned to the remaining young man. "I hope you're not going to be as dramatic as Richard." The young man said nothing, staring at his untouched dessert. Maya cleared the abandoned place setting, her movements mechanical. She was running on autopilot now, just trying to get through the rest of this nightmare. When Marcus finally asked for the check, she felt relief wash over her. It was almost over. She brought the bill in a leather folder. Marcus did not open it. Instead, he pulled out a platinum credit card and tossed it onto the table. "Process this, and be quick about it. I have somewhere important to be." Maya took the card and billed to the payment terminal. The total was over $800. She processed the payment and returned with the receipt for him to sign. This was the moment she had been dreading, because at upscale restaurants like La Lumiere, tips were how servers survived. A standard 20% on this bill would be over $160. Even 15% would help significantly with Jamal's textbook costs next semester. Marcus signed the receipt with a flourish. He left $0 for tip. In the line for gratuity, he had written a single word: "Earn it." Maya stared at those 2 words. After everything, after the insults, the sent-back food, the snapping fingers, the casual cruelty, he was telling her she had not earned a tip. She thought about her grandmother. She thought about Jamal studying late into the night. She thought about every time she had swallowed her pride, smiled through disrespect, and told herself that this was just part of the job. Marcus stood up, buttoning his suit jacket. The remaining young man followed suit, looking relieved to finally be leaving. As they walked toward the exit, Marcus called back over his shoulder, "Next time, hire servers who know their place." Something inside Maya crystallized. The exhaustion, frustration, and anger that had been building all evening suddenly focused into perfect clarity. She was not just a server. She was not just a body to order around. She was a human being who deserved respect, and she was tired of pretending that silence was the same as professionalism. She followed Marcus toward the exit, her footsteps quick but controlled. Other servers noticed, their eyes widening. Gerald looked up from the host's stand, alarm crossing his face. Maya reached Marcus Wellington just as he was about to push open the heavy front door. "Excuse me, sir," she said, her voice steady and clear. "I need to speak with you." Marcus turned, surprise flickering across his face that she had dared to approach him. "What is it?" "I'm in a hurry." The entire restaurant had grown quiet. Conversation stopped. Forks paused halfway to mouths. Everyone sensed that something significant was about to happen. Maya looked directly into Marcus Wellington's eyes. "I want you to know that what you did tonight was wrong." His eyebrows rose. "Excuse me. You treated everyone here with disrespect. You insulted our chef, who has won awards for his cooking. You sent back perfectly prepared food just to feel powerful. You spoke to me and my coworkers like we were beneath you. And after all of that, you left no tip with a note telling me to earn it." She held up the receipt so he could see his own handwriting. Marcus's face began to redden. "How dare you?" "I'm not finished," Maya said, her voice gaining strength. "I have worked here for 3 years. I worked double shifts to support my younger brother's education. I am professional, I am good at my job, and I treat every customer with courtesy and respect, even when they do not deserve it. What you did tonight was not about the food or the service. It was about making yourself feel important by making others feel small." Gerald rushed forward. "Maya, please." The rain continued to fall outside La Lumiere as Maya stood in the middle of the restaurant, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. The applause from some of the diners had faded into uncomfortable murmurs. Gerald stood near the host's stand, his face cycling through emotions like a slot machine, landing on different symbols: shock, fear, anger, confusion. Jennifer rushed over, grabbing Maya's arm. "Oh my God, did you really just do that? Did you actually tell off Marcus Wellington?" Maya nodded, unable to speak yet. Her throat felt tight, and she was not sure if she wanted to laugh or cry. The weight of what she had done was beginning to settle on her shoulders like a heavy coat. "Gerald is going to lose his mind," Jennifer whispered. "Wellington meant what he said. He has the power to destroy this place." Before Maya could respond, Gerald walked toward her with quick, angry steps. His face had settled on fury. "My office. Now." She followed him through the kitchen, past Chef Marcus, who gave her a look she could not quite read, down a narrow hallway to a cramped office filled with filing cabinets and invoices. Gerald shut the door harder than necessary and turned to face her. "What were you thinking?" He did not yell, but his voice shook with barely controlled anger. "Do you have any idea what you just did? Marcus Wellington is not just some rich customer. He sits on the board of the company that owns this restaurant. He has investments in half the upscale dining establishments in Manhattan. One phone call from him, just one, and we could lose everything." "He was cruel," Maya said quietly. "To everyone. The whole night. I don't care if he was the devil himself. You smile, you serve, you collect your tip or you don't, and you move on. That's the job, Maya. That's what we all do." Gerald sat heavily in his chair. He demanded I fire you. "Do you understand that? He will call tomorrow to make sure you are gone." Maya felt her stomach drop. "Are you going to fire me?" Gerald put his head in his hands. "I don't want to. You are one of our best servers. You have never caused a problem before tonight. But if I don't, if Wellington follows through on his threat, this restaurant could face serious consequences. The owner will blame me. I could lose my job too. So you are firing me." "I don't know yet. I need to think. I need to talk to the owner." He looked up at her with tired eyes. "Why couldn't you just let it go? You have worked here 3 years. You know how to handle difficult customers." "I was tired of letting it go," Maya said, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. "I was tired of pretending that behavior like that is acceptable just because someone has money. My grandmother worked for people like him her whole life. She taught me to be respectful, but she also taught me not to let anyone treat me like I am less than human." Gerald sighed deeply. "Your grandmother did not have to worry about keeping a restaurant open in one of the most competitive cities in the world. Go home, Maya. I will call you tomorrow when I know what is happening." She left the office, changed out of her uniform in the staff room, and walked out of La Lumiere into the rain. She had not brought an umbrella. The cold water soaked through her jacket within seconds, but she barely noticed. Her mind was racing through everything that had just happened, replaying the moment she had decided to speak up, wondering if she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. The subway ride home to her small apartment in Queens felt longer than usual. The train was nearly empty at this hour, just a few other late-night workers heading home, all of them wearing the same exhausted expression. Maya stared at her reflection in the dark window, seeing a young woman who looked both stronger and more vulnerable than she had felt a few hours ago. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jamal. "Hey sis, still good to talk tonight? Want to tell you about my engineering project." She texted back, "Rain check? Rough night at work. We'll call you tomorrow. Love you." His response came quickly. "Everything okay? Will be. Get some sleep." She did not want to tell him what happened. Not yet. Jamal looked up to her, trusted her to hold everything together. If she lost her job, she would need a plan before she worried him. His tuition for next semester was due in 6 weeks. She had been saving carefully, but she was still short by about $2,000. Her tips from La Lumiere had been crucial to making up that difference. The apartment was dark and quiet when she got home. She lived alone now. Jamal lived on campus, coming home only during breaks. Maya dropped her wet jacket on a chair, made a cup of tea she did not really want, and sat on the worn couch that had belonged to her grandmother. This couch had been in Grandma Rose's living room, the place where Maya and Jamal had spent countless evenings doing homework while their grandmother cooked dinner and told them stories about their parents. Maya pulled out her phone and opened her photos. She scrolled back to pictures of her grandmother, stopping on one from 2 years ago. Grandma Rose stood in this very apartment on moving day, smiling despite the cancer that was already spreading through her body. She had lived 6 more months, long enough to see Jamal get accepted to college, long enough to make Maya promise she would take care of him. "I don't know if I did the right thing tonight, Grandma," Maya whispered to the photo. "I might have just ruined everything." But, even as she said it, she knew she did not truly regret speaking up. What she regretted was the system that made speaking up so dangerous, that gave people like Marcus Wellington power over people like her. She regretted that standing up for basic dignity could cost someone their livelihood. She barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Marcus Wellington's face, heard Gerald's frustrated voice, imagined the phone call that would end her job. By the time weak morning light filtered through her curtains, she had mentally calculated how long her savings would last if she lost her job, which bills she could delay, whether she could find another position quickly enough to avoid disaster. Her phone rang at 9 in the morning. Gerald's name appeared on the screen. Maya stared at it for 3 rings before answering, her heart in her throat. "Maya," Gerald said, his voice flat and unreadable. "Can you come to the restaurant at 11? The owner wants to speak with you." "Am I fired?" "The owner wants to speak with you in person. Just be here at 11. He hung up without saying goodbye. Maya got ready in a daze, putting on a simple black dress and the good shoes she saved for important occasions. She arrived at La Lumiere 20 minutes early, the restaurant looking strange in daylight with its chairs still stacked on tables and cleaning crew finishing the floors from last night's service. Gerald met her at the door, his expression carefully neutral. "Mr. Castellano is in the private dining room. Follow me." Dominic Castellano was 70 years old, a legendary figure in New York's restaurant scene who had built his empire from a single-family pizza place in Brooklyn. Maya had only met him once before, briefly, during a staff appreciation dinner 2 years ago. He sat at a small table near the window, a cup of espresso in front of him, wearing a casual sweater that probably cost more than her monthly rent. "Miss Richardson," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. "Please sit. Would you like coffee?" "No thank you, sir," Maya said, sitting carefully, her hands folded in her lap. Castellano studied her with dark eyes that had seen decades of the restaurant business. "Gerald told me what happened last night. I also received a very angry phone call this morning from Marcus Wellington. He informed me that either you are fired immediately, or he will withdraw all of his business interests from my restaurants, and use his influence to encourage others to do the same." Maya's heart sank. "I understand, sir. I will clear out my locker. I did not say I was firing you. I said that is what Wellington demanded." Castellano took a sip of his espresso. "Tell me, in your own words, what happened." She recounted the evening, trying to stay factual, describing the sent-back steaks, the insults to Chef Marcus, the way Wellington had treated everyone. She explained about the 0 tip and the note. She admitted she had followed him to the door and confronted him about his behavior. "You know this was not a smart career move," Castellano said when she finished. "Yes, sir. But it felt like the right human move." Something shifted in Castellano's expression. "My father came to this country with nothing. He washed dishes, cleaned floors, took every insult from customers who thought they were better than him because he had an accent. He taught me that respect is earned, yes, but also that every person deserves a baseline of human dignity regardless of what they do for work." He paused. "Marcus Wellington has been a problem customer at my restaurants for years. But he spends a lot of money, and money talks in this business. So we have all looked the other way. I should not have put the restaurant in this position," Maya said. "If my being here causes problems, let me finish," Castellano interrupted gently. "Last night, something interesting happened after you left. Several customers asked Gerald for comment cards. 6 of them wrote specifically about what they witnessed. 4 of them said they were impressed by your professionalism and courage. They said they would continue coming to La Lumiere specifically because we employ people with integrity." Maya blinked, surprised. "This morning, before Wellington called me, I received 3 other calls. One was from Richard Morrison, the young man who walked out during Wellington's dinner. Richard is the son of one of my old friends. He thanked me for having staff members who reminded him that he does not have to tolerate abuse just because someone signs his paycheck. He quit his job working for Wellington this morning, permanently. Castellano pulled out his phone and showed Maya a screenshot of a post on social media. It was from someone who had been dining at the restaurant last night, a woman with thousands of followers. The post read, "Witness the most incredible thing at La Lumiere tonight. A server stood up to an abusive customer with grace and dignity. In a world where money usually wins, it was beautiful to see character win instead. We'll definitely be back to this restaurant." That post has been shared over 5,000 times since last night, Castellano said. People are calling the restaurant to make reservations specifically because of what you did. The story is spreading. Maya did not know what to say. None of this was what she had expected. Now, I also have to consider Wellington's threat, Castellano continued. He does have influence. He could make things difficult. But I have been in this business for 50 years, and I have learned something important. Customers come and go. Trends change. Money flows in different directions. But reputation, real reputation built on how you treat people, that lasts. He finished his espresso. "You are not fired, Miss Richardson. In fact, I am giving you a raise. 10%, effective immediately." Maya's eyes widened. "Sir, I don't understand. Wellington's money is not worth my soul or my staff's dignity. We will manage without his business. And if other billionaires want to follow him out the door because we do not tolerate abuse, then they are not the kind of customers I want anyway." Castellano stood, extending his hand. "Thank you for reminding me why I got into this business in the first place. It was never about serving the richest people. It was about creating a place where everyone, staff and customers, could feel respected." Maya shook his hand, tears threatening to spill from her eyes. "Thank you, sir. I promise I will. Just keep being yourself. That is all I ask." He smiled. "Now go home. You do not work until tomorrow night. Get some rest. And maybe call your brother. Gerald mentioned you are putting him through college. That is something to be proud of." Maya left the restaurant feeling like she was floating. The morning sun had broken through the clouds, turning the wet pavement into mirrors that reflected the sky. She called Jamal immediately. "Hey sis," he answered, sounding worried. "You okay? Your text last night was weird." She told him everything, the words tumbling out in a rush. She told him about Wellington's cruelty, about standing up to him, about thinking she had lost her job, about Castellano's decision and the raise. When she finished, there was silence on the other end. "Jamal, you still there?" "I'm here." His voice sounded thick. "I'm just thinking about what Grandma would say if she could hear this story." Maya smiled through tears. "What would she say?" "She would say you are exactly who she raised you to be." And she would 3 days after the confrontation. Maya's life had become unrecognizable. Her phone rang constantly with calls from reporters, talk shows, and people claiming to be documentary filmmakers who wanted to tell her story. Someone had found her social media accounts, and she woke up to thousands of new followers and hundreds of messages from strangers. Some were supportive, calling her brave and inspiring. Others were cruel, calling her names and telling her she should have kept her mouth shut. She stopped reading the comments after the first day. The attention felt overwhelming, like standing in a spotlight that was far too bright. She was not a public figure. She was just someone who had reached her limit and spoken up. The fact that it had sparked such a massive response felt surreal. La Lumiere had become a destination. Reservations were booked solid for the next 2 months. People wanted to eat at the restaurant where the viral confrontation had happened. Some customers asked to be seated in Maya's section specifically, wanting to meet the woman from the video. Tips had increased dramatically. Other servers teased her good-naturedly about becoming a celebrity, but Maya could see the genuine happiness in their eyes. The increased business meant better income for everyone. Gerald had apologized to her privately. "I was wrong," he had said, looking uncomfortable with the admission. "I was so focused on keeping Wellington happy that I forgot what we are supposed to stand for. You reminded all of us that some things matter more than money." Chef Marcus had hugged her, something he had never done before. "You defended my cooking and my honor," he said in his thick French accent. "For this, you have my loyalty forever." But while Maya's world had exploded with attention, Marcus Wellington's world was experiencing a different kind of explosion. The video of their confrontation had been dissected by countless social media users, journalists, and commentators. Old stories began to surface about Wellington's behavior. Former employees, emboldened by Maya's example, started sharing their own experiences of working for him. A young woman who had been his executive assistant for 6 months wrote a detailed account of the verbal abuse she had endured, how Wellington had made her cry daily, how he had criticized everything from her clothing to her intelligence. She had quit without another job lined up because she could not take another day of his treatment. A business partner came forward to describe how Wellington had publicly humiliated him during a board meeting, mocking his presentation in front of 24 colleagues, making personal attacks that had nothing to do with the work. The man had suffered anxiety attacks for months afterward. The stories multiplied. Waiters from other restaurants, delivery drivers, housekeeping staff at hotels where Wellington stayed. A pattern emerged of a man who believed his wealth gave him permission to treat anyone he considered beneath him with contempt and cruelty. Wellington Enterprises, his main holding company, saw its stock continue to drop. Several major investors issued statements distancing themselves from his personal behavior. 2 companies canceled partnership deals, citing concerns about brand association. The financial damage was mounting, but more concerning to Wellington was the damage to his image. He called an emergency meeting with his crisis management team in the sleek conference room of his Manhattan headquarters. 6 people sat around the glass table, all of them looking nervous. They had good reason to be. Wellington's temper was legendary, and he had been in a constant state of rage since the video went viral. "Fix this," Wellington said, his voice cold and controlled in a way that was somehow more frightening than yelling. "I do not care how. I want that woman discredited. I want this story to go away. I want my reputation restored." His head of public relations, a sharp woman named Patricia Chun, chose her words carefully. "Mr. Wellington, the conventional approach would be to issue a public apology. Acknowledge that you were having a bad day, that your behavior did not reflect your true character, and commit to doing better. The public tends to be forgiving if the apology seems genuine." "Absolutely not," Wellington snapped. "I am not apologizing to some waitress for having standards. I did nothing wrong." "Sir, with respect, the video shows nothing. It shows me sending back food that was not prepared correctly and refusing to tip for substandard service. That is my right as a customer." Patricia exchanged glances with the other team members. "Sir, the chef at La Lumiere is award-winning. The food was prepared perfectly, and the larger issue is how you spoke to the staff. The public perception, I don't care about public perception. I care about facts. The fact is that woman was insubordinate and disrespectful. She followed me to the door to confront me. That is harassment." One of Wellington's lawyers, a man named David Friedman, leaned forward. "We could pursue a harassment claim, but I would strongly advise against it. It would keep the story in the news cycle and make you look vindictive. Right now, the narrative is David versus Goliath, the powerless worker against the powerful billionaire. If you sue her, you cement that narrative." Wellington's jaw clenched. "So your advice is to do nothing? To let this woman destroy my reputation and face no consequences?" "My advice is to let the story die naturally," David said. "These viral moments have a short lifespan. In a few weeks, something else will capture public attention. If you fight back, you give it oxygen. You keep it alive. I built my empire by fighting, not by hiding and hoping problems disappear." Wellington stood, walking to the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. "I want a different approach. I want information on Maya Richardson. Everything. Where she lives, where she went to school, her family, her friends, her finances. There has to be something we can use." Patricia looked uncomfortable. "Sir, that sounds like you were talking about opposition research. That is typically used in political campaigns, not in, I don't care what it is typically used for. I want to know who this woman is. She wants to make me look bad? I will show the world who she really is." He turned back to face the table. "And I want someone to start making calls. Remind people in this city who I am and what I have built. Remind them that I have been a major donor to charities, museums, universities. Remind them that I employ thousands of people. I want favorable stories planted, interviews arranged, anything that counters this ridiculous narrative." The meeting continued for another hour, with Wellington rejecting most of his team's advice and insisting on an aggressive counterattack. After everyone left, he sat alone in his office, staring at the city below. He had not gotten to where he was by backing down. He had clawed his way up from a middle-class family in Ohio, worked brutal hours, made difficult decisions, and refused to let anyone stand in his way. The idea that some waitress could damage everything he had built was intolerable. But what Wellington did not understand was that the world had changed. In the age of social media, wealth and power were not the only currencies that mattered. Authenticity mattered, decency mattered, and people were tired of watching the rich and powerful escape consequences for bad behavior. While Wellington plotted his comeback, Maya was dealing with her own challenges. A producer from a major morning show had called offering to fly her to their studio for an interview. The appearance fee would be more than she made in 2 months at the restaurant. She was tempted, desperately tempted, but something held her back. She called Jamal to talk it through. "It's a lot of money," she admitted. "And they said it would be a chance to tell my side of the story." "What is your side of the story?" Jamal asked. "I mean, the video shows what happened. Everyone already knows you stood up to him." "That's what I keep thinking. If I go on TV, am I doing it to help other people, or am I just trying to profit from the situation?" "Maybe it can be both," Jamal suggested. "Maybe you deserve to benefit from your courage. You took a risk. Why shouldn't you get something out of it?" Maya thought about her grandmother again. What would Grandma Rose say? She had never sought attention or praise for her work. She had simply done what she thought was right and moved on with her life. The idea of appearing on national television, of making this moment into a spectacle, felt wrong somehow. "I think I am going to say no," Maya decided. "This was never about getting famous or making money. It was about one moment where I decided I could not stay silent anymore. Turning it into a media tour feels like I am missing the point." "Whatever you decide, I support you," Jamal said. "But sis, you should know that what you did has already helped people. I have been reading some of the comments online. Real people sharing real stories about how seeing you stand up gave them courage to set boundaries at their own jobs. That matters." After they hung up, Maya declined the television interview. She also turned down a book deal offer, a podcast interview, and an invitation to speak at a conference about workplace dignity. She did agree to one thing. A local journalist named Sarah Martinez, who had covered labor issues for years, wanted to write a long-form article, not about the viral moment, but about the broader issues of service work and how employees were treated. Maya agreed because Sarah's work was serious and focused on systemic problems rather than viral drama. They met at a quiet coffee shop in Queens. Sarah was in her 40s, with warm eyes and a notebook covered in coffee stains. "Thank you for agreeing to talk," she said. "I promise this is not going to be one of those pieces that turns you into a hero or a villain. I want to talk about what it is really like to work in service industries." Over 2 hours, Maya shared her experiences. Not just the night with Wellington, but the years of working in restaurants. She talked about customers who left Bible verses instead of tips, who snapped fingers to get her attention, who made inappropriate comments, who complained to get free meals they did not deserve. She also talked about the wonderful customers, the regulars who remembered her name and asked about her brother, the family who had celebrated every birthday at La Lumiere and always requested her section, the man who had left a $500 tip when he learned she was saving for her brother's college. "The thing people do not understand," Maya explained, "is that most service workers are not asking for special treatment. We are just asking to be seen as human beings. We are asking for basic respect. The problem is not occasional rude customers. Every job has difficult moments. The problem is a culture that tells wealthy people they can treat workers however they want because they are paying for a service." Sarah nodded, writing quickly. "What do you want people to take away from your story?" "I want people to think about how they treat service workers. Next time someone is serving them food or cleaning their hotel room or delivering their packages, I want them to remember that person has a life, a family, dreams, and struggles just like everyone else. A little kindness costs nothing. And if you see someone being abusive to workers, speak up. Do not just watch and feel uncomfortable. Say something." The article appeared 2 weeks later in a prominent online magazine. It was thoughtful, well-researched, and contextualized Maya's story within larger conversations about income inequality, worker rights, and the service industry. It included interviews with labor organizers, other service workers, and even a few restaurant owners who admitted the industry had long tolerated customer behavior that would not be acceptable in other contexts. The article went viral in its own right, but in a different way than the original video. This time, the conversation was deeper. People started sharing tips for being better customers, posting about times they had witnessed or experienced workplace abuse, calling for systemic changes rather than just celebrating one woman's moment of courage. Meanwhile, Wellington's research team had compiled a file on Maya Richardson. They found nothing scandalous. She had never been arrested, had good credit, paid her taxes on time, had no controversial social media posts, no secret vices or embarrassing past. She was exactly what she appeared to be, a hard-working woman supporting her family. Wellington stared at the file in frustration. He had been certain there would be something, some angle he could use. Everyone had secrets, mistakes, things they wanted to hide. But Maya Richardson's life was frustratingly clean. Patricia Chen entered his office with a tablet. "Sir, you need to see this." She showed him the article Sarah Martinez had written. Wellington read it, his face darkening with each paragraph. The piece quoted several former employees of his companies anonymously, people who described his management style as abusive and demeaning. It connected his behavior at La Lumiere to a pattern of how he treated employees across all his businesses. "This is defamation," Wellington said. "Sue them. Sue the magazine. Sue the writer. Sue everyone involved." "Sir, everything in the article is either documented fact or clearly attributed to specific sources. We would lose a defamation case, and it would make things worse." Patricia sat down across from him. "Mr. Wellington, I have worked in crisis management for 20 years. I have helped CEOs recover from scandals, politicians survive controversies, celebrities rebuild their images. But I can only help if you are willing to change the underlying behavior. Your reputation is not suffering because of one video or one article. It is suffering because people recognize truth when they see it. They believe these stories because they ring true." Wellington's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Are you suggesting I am the problem?" "I am suggesting that perception has become reality, and the only way to change that perception is to demonstrate real change." Patricia met his gaze steadily. "You asked me to fix this. That is my professional recommendation. Your recommendation is that I grovel? That I pretend to be someone I am not? My recommendation is that you decide what kind of legacy you want to leave. Right now, you are going to be remembered as the rude billionaire who got taken down by a waitress. Is that really how you want to be known?" After Patricia left, Wellington sat in silence for a long time. The city lights spread out below him, millions of people living their lives, working their jobs, most of them never knowing his name. He had spent his entire adult life accumulating wealth and power, believing these things would make him important, memorable, respected. Instead, he was becoming infamous for cruelty. For the first time in decades, Marcus Wellington felt something unfamiliar, doubt. Not about his business decisions or his financial acumen, but about whether he had been right about everything else. About how power should be used. About how people should be treated. About what actually mattered. He pulled out his phone and did something he had not done in years. Maya was organizing the server station at La Lumiere, preparing for the evening shift, when Gerald approached her with an odd expression on his face. It was a mixture of confusion, concern, and something that might have been amusement. "You have a visitor," he said quietly. "I put him in the private dining room." "A visitor?" "Gerald, I told you I am not doing any more interviews. I just want to work." "It is not a reporter." Gerald hesitated. "It is Marcus Wellington." Maya felt her stomach drop. "What? Why is he here?" "He said he wants to talk to you." "Just talk." He asked very politely if you would spare him 15 minutes. Gerald looked as surprised as Maya felt. "I can tell him to leave if you want. You do not owe him anything." Maya's first instinct was to refuse. The man had tried to get her fired, had likely spent the past few weeks trying to destroy her reputation, and now he wanted to talk? But curiosity mixed with her anger. What could Marcus Wellington possibly have to say to her? "I will give him 10 minutes, she said. "But you stay nearby, just in case." Gerald nodded. "I will be right outside the door." Maya walked to the private dining room, her heart beating faster with each step. She pushed open the door and found Marcus Wellington sitting at the small table, looking very different from the man she remembered. He was not wearing one of his expensive suits. Instead, he wore simple slacks and a sweater that looked almost ordinary. His silver hair was less perfectly styled. He looked smaller somehow, less imposing, though Maya could not quite identify what had changed. He stood when she entered, a gesture of politeness she had not expected. Miss Richardson, thank you for agreeing to see me. I know I have no right to your time. You have 10 minutes, Maya said, remaining standing near the door. What do you want? Wellington gestured to the chair across from him. Would you please sit? I promise I am not here to threaten you or cause problems. I just want to talk. Maya sat, but kept her posture rigid, ready to leave at any moment. I am listening. Wellington took a breath, and Maya noticed his hands were clasped tightly together, almost nervously. This was not the confident, cruel man from a few weeks ago. I came to apologize for how I treated you that night, and for how I have treated countless other people throughout my life. Of all the things Maya had expected, this was not one of them. She said nothing, waiting for him to continue. I have spent the past few weeks watching my reputation collapse, Wellington said. I have read articles about my behavior, seen people share stories about how I treated them, watched my stock price drop. My initial response was anger. I wanted to fight back, to destroy you the way I felt you had destroyed me. I hired people to dig into your life, looking for anything I could use against you. Maya felt a chill. And what did you find? Nothing. You are exactly what you appear to be. A good person working hard to support her family. Which made me angrier, because I wanted you to be a fraud. I wanted there to be some hidden scandal that would prove I had been right about you. He paused. But my PR director said something that I could not stop thinking about. She asked what kind of legacy I wanted to leave. And I realized I did not have a good answer. Wellington looked down at his hands. I am 62 years old. I have built a successful company, made billions of dollars, achieved everything I thought I wanted. But when I am gone, what will people remember? They will remember that I was cruel. They will remember that I made people cry. They will remember the rude billionaire who got confronted by a brave waitress. Is this supposed to make me feel sorry for you? Maya asked, her voice hard. Because I do not. No, I am not asking for your sympathy. I am trying to explain why I am here. Wellington finally looked up, meeting her eyes. That night, when you confronted me, you said something that I have not been able to forget. You said that money does not give someone the right to treat people like they are worthless. You were right, and I have spent my entire adult life being wrong about that. Maya studied his face, trying to determine if this was genuine or just another manipulation. Why should I believe you? You could be here because your PR team told you an apology would help your image. They did tell me that. They have been telling me to apologize publicly for weeks. But I refused because I did not actually feel sorry. I was only sorry I got caught behaving the way I always behave. Wellington leaned forward slightly. But something changed over these past few weeks. I started really thinking about my life, about the people I have hurt. I thought about Richard, the young man who quit that night. I called him to apologize, and he told me about the panic attacks he had been having, how my constant criticism had made him doubt everything about himself. He is in therapy now, trying to recover from working for me. Maya felt a small crack in her armor. That detail felt too specific, too painful to be fabricated. I reached out to my former executive assistant, the one who wrote about her experience working for me. I apologized to her. She hung up on me, which I deserved. I tried to apologize to several other people, and most of them refused to even speak to me. Wellington's voice grew quieter. I am starting to understand the real cost of how I have lived. Not the financial cost, but the human cost. So you want me to forgive you? Maya asked. To tell you that you are not a bad person? No, I am not asking for forgiveness. I am not even sure I deserve it. I am here because you were brave enough to tell me the truth when no one else would. And I want to ask you a question. He paused. Do you think people can change? Really change, not just pretend to be different for a while. Maya thought about her grandmother, who had always believed in redemption. Grandma Rose used to say that people were not defined by their worst moments, but by whether they tried to do better afterward. But she had also taught Maya to trust actions, not words. I think people can change if they really want to, Maya said slowly. But wanting to change because your reputation is suffering is not the same as wanting to change because you understand you have hurt people. Real change is hard. It means examining everything you thought you knew about yourself and admitting you were wrong. Most people are not willing to do that. How would someone prove they were willing? If you were in my position, what would you do? Maya considered this. I would start by making amends to the people I had hurt, not with money but with genuine acknowledgement of the harm caused. I would change how I treated people in my daily life, not just in public, but in private. I would use my wealth and influence to help others instead of controlling them. And I would accept that some people will never forgive me. And that would be okay because forgiveness is not owed, it is earned. Wellington nodded slowly, absorbing her words. I have been thinking about my company, about the culture I have created there. I built it on the idea that being tough, being demanding, pushing people to their limits was how you got the best results. But what if I was wrong? What if I have been getting results despite my behavior, not because of it? You have been wrong, Maya said bluntly. People do not perform better when they are afraid or humiliated. They perform better when they feel valued and respected. That is basic psychology. I want to change how my company operates. I want to bring in people who understand how to create a healthy work environment. I want to institute policies that protect employees from the kind of behavior I have normalized. Wellington looked directly at Maya. Would you be willing to consult on that? I would pay you well for your time and expertise. Maya almost laughed. My expertise? I am a waitress, Mr. Wellington. I do not know anything about running a billion-dollar company. But you know what it is like to be on the receiving end of abuse from people in power. You know what needs to change because you have lived it. That is more valuable than any business degree. I appreciate the offer, but no, I do not want to be part of your redemption story. If you want to change your company culture, there are professional consultants who specialize in that. Talk to them. Wellington looked disappointed, but nodded. I understand. Can I ask why you are refusing? Because I do not trust you yet. You say you want to change, but words are easy. Come back in a year after you have actually done the work, after you have proven that this is not just a temporary reaction to bad publicity. And maybe then, we can talk. Maya stood up. Your 10 minutes are up. Wellington stood as well. Thank you for seeing me. And thank you for what you did that night. You probably saved me from becoming someone completely irredeemable. As Maya turned to leave, Wellington spoke again. One more thing. I know I hurt you professionally and personally. Is there anything I can do to make amends to you specifically? Maya turned back. You could donate to scholarship funds for students from low-income families. You could fund programs that help service workers get training for better jobs. You could use your influence to push for better wages and working conditions in the service industry. Do not do something for me personally. Do something that helps people like me who do not have platforms or power. I will, Wellington said. I promise I will. Maya left the room, finding Gerald waiting anxiously outside. Everything okay? Yes. He apologized. Said he wants to change. Maya shook her head. I do not know if I believe him, but at least he showed up. What Maya did not know was that Wellington meant every word. Over the following weeks, he began the difficult process of real change. He started meeting with organizational psychologists who specialized in workplace culture. He instituted new policies at Wellington Enterprises, including anonymous feedback systems, mandatory respect training for all executives, and clear consequences for abusive behavior regardless of someone's position. He donated $5 million to scholarship programs for first-generation college students. He funded a nonprofit that provided job training for service workers. He wrote a public essay, not about his confrontation with Maya, but about his journey of recognizing how his wealth and power had corrupted his treatment of others. But he also faced consequences. Several business partners still refused to work with him. Some former employees rejected his apologies, their wounds too deep to heal with words. His social standing had permanently shifted. Invitations to exclusive events dried up. People who had courted his favor now kept their distance. Wellington discovered that redemption was not a destination, but a continuous journey. Every day presented new opportunities to revert to his old patterns or to choose differently. Some days he succeeded. Some days he failed. But he kept trying. 6 months after their meeting, Maya received a letter from Richard Morrison, the young man who had quit during that infamous dinner. Richard wrote about how he had started therapy, how he was working for a new company with a healthy culture, how he was recovering his confidence and sense of self-worth. At the end of the letter, he wrote, Mr. Wellington reached out to me several times to apologize and offer to pay for my therapy. I finally accepted his help, not because I forgive him completely, but because I believe he is genuinely trying to change. What you did that night set off a chain reaction that has helped many people, including me. Thank you. Maya showed the letter to Jamal during one of his weekend visits home. They sat in their small apartment, eating the pasta dish that had been their grandmother's specialty. "Do you think Wellington has really changed?" Jamal asked. "I think he is trying to change, which is more than most people, in 9 months had passed since the confrontation that changed everything." Maya stood in the break room at La Lumiere, looking at an acceptance letter she had received that morning. Columbia University's School of Social Work had accepted her into their graduate program with a full scholarship, funded by an anonymous donor. She suspected she knew who that donor was, but the scholarship foundation had refused to confirm it. For months, she had been thinking about her future. Working at La Lumiere was good, and with her raise and increased tips, she was financially stable. But the conversation sparked by her viral moment had revealed something to her. There were systemic problems in how society treated service workers, low-wage employees, and people without power. She wanted to be part of solving those problems, not just surviving within them. Social work felt like the right path. She could help people navigate systems designed to keep them down. She could advocate for policy changes. She could use her experience and her voice to make a real difference. But graduate school meant giving up full-time work, relying on the scholarship and part-time jobs, trusting that the investment in education would pay off in the long run. Jamal was graduating in 3 months with his engineering degree and already had a job lined up at a tech company. He had told her repeatedly that he could help support her now, that it was his turn to give back after everything she had sacrificed for him. The idea of accepting help was difficult for Maya, who had been the caretaker for so long. But she was learning that accepting support was not weakness. She was pulling out her phone to call Jamal with the news when Jennifer rushed into the break room, her face flushed with excitement. "Maya, you need to come to the dining room. Right now." "What is going on?" "My shift does not start for 20 minutes. Just come. Trust me." Maya followed Jennifer into the main dining room, which was empty except for Mr. Castellano, Gerald, Chef Marcus, and about a dozen other staff members gathered near the windows. They all turned to look at her with expressions she could not quite read. "What is this?" Maya asked, suddenly nervous. Mr. Castellano stepped forward, holding a folder. "Miss Richardson, over the past 9 months, something remarkable has happened at this restaurant. We have seen a 30% increase in business. Our staff retention has improved dramatically, and we have received countless letters from customers praising not just our food but our culture of respect and dignity." Maya felt confused. "That is wonderful, sir. But I do not understand what this has to do with." "It has everything to do with you," Castellano interrupted gently. "What you did that night reminded all of us what this business should be about. But more than that, your example inspired others. Several of our servers have gone back to school, pursuing dreams they had put aside. 2 of our kitchen staff started small businesses. Chef Marcus has been teaching free cooking classes to young people from low-income neighborhoods. This restaurant has become more than just a place to eat. It has become a place where people remember their dignity matters." Chef Marcus stepped forward. "We heard about your acceptance to Columbia. Congratulations. You will be a magnifique social worker. How did you know about that?" "I just got the letter this morning." Castellano smiled. "The Scholarship Foundation contacted me for a reference. I was happy to provide one. But we also wanted to do something for you." He handed her the folder. "Inside you will find a contract for a new position we are creating, Director of Staff Advocacy and Workplace Culture. The job would involve consulting with our restaurants about employee treatment, helping develop policies that protect workers, and serving as an advisor to management on creating respectful work environments. It is part-time, 20 hours a week, flexible schedule to accommodate your graduate program, and it pays enough to cover your living expenses." Maya opened the folder, staring at the numbers on the contract. The salary was more than she made full-time as a server. "Mr. Castellano, I do not know what to say. Say yes. Use your education and your experience to help us become better. And when you graduate, if you want to expand this work to other restaurants, other industries, we will support that too." Maya felt tears welling up in her eyes. Yes, I will do it. Thank you." The staff erupted in applause. Jennifer hugged her tightly. Chef Marcus kissed both her cheeks. Gerald shook her hand with genuine warmth. In this moment, surrounded by people who had become like family, Maya understood that her decision to speak up that night had not just changed her life. It had created opportunities for growth and transformation that she never could have imagined. Across the city, in his office at Wellington Enterprises, Marcus Wellington was in a meeting that would have been unthinkable a year ago. Sitting across from him were representatives from a workers' rights organization, and they were discussing a partnership to improve conditions for employees across all of his companies. "We appreciate your willingness to engage with us, Mr. Wellington," said Maria Gonzalez, the organization's director. "But you must understand that we have seen many corporations make promises about workplace improvements and then fail to follow through. What guarantees can you offer that this will be different?" Wellington nodded. "I understand your skepticism. My track record speaks for itself, and it is not flattering. What I can offer are concrete commitments with external accountability. I am proposing that we establish an independent oversight board, funded by my company but operated by your organization, to monitor workplace conditions and employee treatment. Any employee at any level can file confidential complaints with this board, and the board has the authority to investigate and recommend changes. I will commit in writing to implementing those recommendations." Maria exchanged glances with her colleagues. "That is more than we expected. It is less than what is needed," Wellington said. "I have spent 9 months trying to change, and I have learned that good intentions are not enough. I need systems that prevent me from reverting to my old patterns. I need accountability that does not depend on my mood or my ego." He pulled out a document. "I have also drafted a new code of conduct for all executives and managers. It explicitly prohibits the kind of behavior I engaged in for years. Violations result in immediate consequences, including termination for repeat offenses. This applies to everyone, including me." One of Maria's colleagues, a young man named David, spoke up. "Mr. Wellington, can I ask you something directly? Why are you doing this? Is it because you genuinely want to change, or because your reputation and stock price are still recovering?" Wellington considered the question carefully. 6 months ago, I would have said it was entirely about redemption and reputation. But something shifted. I started seeing my employees as actual people, not just resources to be managed. I started understanding the real harm I had caused, not in abstract terms, but in specific human stories. A few weeks ago, one of my former assistants, a woman I had made cry multiple times, sent me a letter. She told me she had quit not just her job with me, but her entire career. She had wanted to work in finance since she was a child, but I had destroyed her confidence so thoroughly that she could not imagine continuing in that field. Wellington's voice grew thick with emotion. She is working as a librarian now. She says she is happier, that it is a better fit for her. But she also said she wonders who she might have become if I had not broken something inside her. That letter haunts me. So to answer your question, I am doing this because I want to stop being someone who breaks people. I am doing this because I want whatever years I have left to mean something other than accumulating money and causing pain. The room fell silent. Finally, Maria nodded. "We would like to work with you on this partnership, but we will be watching closely, and if this turns out to be just for show, we will not hesitate to make that public." "I would expect nothing less," Wellington said. After the meeting, Wellington's new chief people officer, a woman named Dr. Sarah Chun, who specialized in organizational culture, stopped by his office. "That went well. I think we are making real progress. Do you think it is enough?" Wellington asked. "All these changes, all these programs, can they undo the damage I have caused?" Dr. Chin sat down. "They cannot undo the past, but they can prevent future damage and create opportunities for healing. Change of this magnitude is not measured in months or even years. It is measured in decades. You have started something important, but you have to be prepared for this to be the work of the rest of your life." "I am prepared for that," Wellington said, "though some days are harder than others. Yesterday, I was in a meeting and someone made a mistake in their presentation. My immediate reaction was to criticize them harshly. I had to physically stop myself, take a breath, and respond constructively instead. The old instincts are still there. That is normal. You are rewiring neural pathways that have been strengthened over 40 years. The fact that you caught yourself and chose differently is evidence of real change." Dr. Chin smiled. "Can I share something with you? When I was first approached about this position, I almost turned it down. I had heard the stories about you, and I did not want to work for someone with your reputation. But then, I spoke with some of your former employees, the ones you had apologized to. 3 of them told me they believed you were genuinely trying to change. That is what convinced me to take the job. Wellington felt something warm in his chest. Which former employees? I am not at liberty to say. But one of them told me something I think you should hear. They said, Wellington is finally learning that power is not about making people fear you. It is about using your resources to help others become powerful too. I think that is beautiful. That evening, Wellington did something he had started doing 6 months ago. He volunteered at a soup kitchen in Brooklyn, serving food to people experiencing homelessness. No cameras, no publicity, no one who needed to know his name. He had started doing this on the advice of his therapist, who suggested he spend time in spaces where his wealth and status meant nothing. An older man named Frank had become something of a regular dinner companion during these volunteer shifts. Frank had worked construction for 30 years before a workplace injury left him unable to work and eventually homeless. He did not know who Wellington was, and Wellington had not told him. You seem different tonight, Frank observed as they ate together after the dinner service ended. Less tense. I had a good day at work, Wellington said. Made some progress on things that matter. What kind of work do you do? I run a company. We are trying to make some changes, treat people better. Frank nodded thoughtfully. That is important work. I worked for a lot of companies over the years. The best ones were the ones where the bosses treated you like you mattered, not just like a pair of hands. The worst ones made you feel like you were disposable. Which category do you think I fall into? Wellington asked, curious about this stranger's intuition. I think you are trying to move from the second category to the first, Frank said perceptively. You got that look of someone who is trying to make up for something. I respect that. A lot of people never even try. Wellington smiled. Thank you, Frank. That means more than you know. 3 months later, Jamal graduated from college with honors. Maya sat in the audience with tears streaming down her face, thinking about how proud their parents and grandmother would have been. After the ceremony, Jamal found her in the crowd and hugged her tightly. I did it, sis. We did it. You did this, Jamal. All that hard work, all those late nights studying. This is your achievement. No way. I could not have done any of this without you. You sacrificed everything to make this possible. He pulled back to look at her. But it is your turn now. You are starting grad school in the fall. You have that new position at the restaurant, and you are finally getting to pursue your dreams. I am so proud of you. They celebrated at a small restaurant in Queens, joined by a few of Jamal's friends from college. During dinner, Jamal raised his glass. I want to make a toast to my sister. 9 months ago, she did something brave that went viral and changed her life. But what most people do not know is that she has been doing brave things every single day for years. Working double shifts to pay for my education. Standing up for what is right even when it is risky. Being there for everyone who needs her. Maya, you are my hero, and I hope I can be half the person you are. Maya wiped her eyes, laughing and crying at the same time. You are already twice the person I am, and I cannot wait to see what you do with your engineering degree. As they left the restaurant that night, Maya's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. She opened it and found a brief note. Congratulations to your brother on his graduation. I hope you both know how lucky you are to have each other. Thank you again for your courage that night. It continues to change lives, including mine. MW. She showed the message to Jamal. Is that who I think it is? Marcus Wellington, Maya confirmed. He still checks in occasionally. I think he is trying to prove that his change is real. What do you think? Is it real? Maya thought about the question as they walked through the warm, spring evening. I think he is doing the work. I hear things through professional networks, people who work at his company talking about how different the culture has become. He funded that workers' rights partnership. He changed his policies. He shows up to volunteer regularly. Is he a perfect person now? No. Will he ever fully make up for the pain he caused? Probably not. But he is trying, and that matters. Do you think you will ever forgive him? I do not know if forgiveness is mine to give. He did not just hurt me. He hurt hundreds or thousands of people over decades. Those people get to decide whether to forgive him. Maya smiled. But I will say this. I am glad my confrontation with him led to changes that are helping people now. If his transformation is genuine, then some good came from that terrible night. A year after the confrontation, La Lumiere held a special event. They were launching an industry-wide initiative, partnered with Wellington Enterprises and several other major restaurant groups, to establish standards for respectful treatment of service workers. The initiative included training programs, clear policies against abusive behavior, and support systems for workers who experienced mistreatment. Maya stood at a podium in front of an audience of restaurant owners, industry leaders, and workers' advocates. She had never imagined herself in this position, speaking to hundreds of people about workplace dignity. But her work in graduate school, combined with her role at La Lumiere, had given her expertise and credibility. "I am not here to tell you my viral moment was heroic," she began. "I am here to tell you it should never have been necessary. The fact that a waitress standing up to a rude customer became national news tells you how broken our systems are. In a healthy workplace culture, what I did would be unremarkable. Employees would feel safe setting boundaries. Customers would understand that paying for service does not mean buying permission to abuse staff. Managers would support their workers instead of prioritizing difficult customers." She paused, looking out at the audience. "But we do not live in that world yet. We live in a world where service workers regularly face harassment, disrespect, and abuse. Where speaking up can cost you your job. Where customers believe their money gives them power over human beings. We are here today to start changing that world." The initiative launched to significant media coverage. Several major restaurant chains signed on to participate. Workers' organizations praised the effort while remaining cautiously optimistic about implementation. It was not a perfect solution, but it was a meaningful step forward. Marcus Wellington attended the event, but sat in the back, not seeking attention or recognition. When reporters asked him for comments, he directed them to Maya and the workers' advocates leading the initiative. This too was a change. The old Wellington would have seized the opportunity for publicity. The new Wellington understood that his role was to provide resources and support, not to make the story about his redemption. After the event, Maya and Wellington spoke briefly in a quiet corner. "Thank you for your support of this initiative," Maya said. "The funding you provided made it possible. It is the least I could do. Literally, the very least." Wellington smiled slightly. "How is graduate school?" "Challenging and wonderful. I am learning so much about systems change, policy advocacy, all the things I wish I had known years ago." "You are going to be an excellent social worker. You already are, really. You have been doing the work long before you had the degree." Wellington hesitated. "May I ask you something? Do you think I will ever stop being known as the rude billionaire who got confronted by a waitress? Is that going to be my legacy no matter what I do now?" Maya considered this carefully. "I think it will always be part of your story. You cannot erase the past, but you can add new chapters. In 10 years, if you keep doing this work, keep making real changes, people might remember you as the billionaire who learned from his mistakes and spent the rest of his life trying to make amends. That is not a bad legacy." "No," Wellington agreed. "It is not." They shook hands and parted ways. Maya rejoined Jamal, who had attended the event to support her. Wellington walked out into the Manhattan evening, getting into a modest sedan rather than the limousine he once would have demanded. His driver, a man named James who had worked for him for 2 years, greeted him warmly. "How did the event go, Mr. Wellington?" "It went well, James. Real progress was made today." Wellington paused. "How are your wife and kids doing? Your daughter had a soccer tournament last weekend, right?" James smiled, surprised and pleased that Wellington remembered. "She did. Her team won. She scored 2 goals. That is wonderful. You must be very proud." It was a small moment, a brief exchange that no one would ever know about. But for Wellington, these small moments had become the measure of his change. How he treated people when no one was watching. How he remembered the human details of others' lives. How he used his position to uplift rather than diminish. 5 years later, Maya completed her master's degree in social work and was hired by a major nonprofit organization focused on workers' rights. She had become a recognized voice in conversations about workplace dignity, service industry reform, and economic justice. She testified before city council committees, wrote articles about systemic change, and trained organizations on creating respectful cultures. Jamal had gotten married and was expecting his first child. Maya would be an aunt soon, and she could not wait. She thought often about her grandmother, wishing Grandma Rose could see how both her grandchildren had thrived, how they had honored her memory by treating others with dignity and standing up for what was right. Wellington Enterprises had become a model for progressive workplace policies. The company's turnover rate had dropped dramatically. Employee satisfaction surveys showed significant improvements. Several executives who had worked for Wellington during his transformation period had moved on to other companies, bringing those same values with them and spreading the culture change beyond just one organization. Marcus Wellington himself had stepped back from day-to-day operations, appointing a new CEO while he focused on philanthropic work. He funded scholarships, supported workers' organizations, and invested in programs that helped people escape poverty. He still struggled sometimes with his old patterns, still caught himself being impatient or dismissive, but the struggle itself was evidence of awareness and growth. He never became beloved. Some former employees never forgave him. Some people always saw him as the villain trying to buy redemption. But others recognized his transformation as genuine, as proof that people could change even late in life, even after causing tremendous harm. The viral video from that night at La Lumiere still existed on the internet, still occasionally resurfaced, and was shared again. New generations discovered it and debated what it meant. Some saw it as a story about justice, others as a moment of reckoning, still others as evidence that standing up to power was possible and necessary. For Maya, the video had become something she rarely watched but often reflected on. It represented a turning point, not just in her life, but in her understanding of her own power. She had learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to speak up despite it. That dignity was not given by others, but claimed by yourself. That change, real lasting change, began with someone deciding that enough was enough. On a quiet evening 10 years after that fateful night, Maya received an invitation to speak at a university about her experiences and her work. The student who invited her mentioned that she had seen the video in high school, and it had inspired her to pursue a degree in labor relations. She wanted to thank Maya in person. Maya accepted the invitation. As she prepared her remarks, she thought about how one moment of frustration and courage had rippled outward in ways she never could have predicted. How it had changed her life, transformed a billionaire's perspective, sparked conversations that led to policy changes, and inspired countless people to stand up for themselves and others. The story that began with cruelty and confrontation had become a story about transformation, redemption, and the enduring power of human dignity. It proved that everyone, regardless of wealth or position, had the ability to make a difference, sometimes through grand gestures, but often through simple acts of courage. A waitress refusing to be treated as less than human, a billionaire choosing to listen rather than retaliate, a community supporting those who stood up for what was right. Maya's grandmother had been right all along. You could be respectful without being a doormat. You could honor others while honoring yourself. And sometimes, the bravest thing you could do was simply to stand tall and speak your truth, trusting that dignity and courage would create their own kind of power. The night Maya confronted Marcus Wellington, she had no idea she was starting a movement. She was just trying to make it through another difficult shift. But that is how most meaningful changes begin, not with grand plans or perfect strategies, but with ordinary people reaching their breaking point and deciding that silence is no longer acceptable. Their story became a reminder that everyone deserves respect, that power comes with responsibility, and that it is never too late to choose differently. It showed that standing up for yourself could change not just your own life, but countless others. And it proved that the most powerful force in the world is not money or status or influence, but the simple, unshakable belief that every human being has worth. Maya Richardson had stood up to a rude billionaire and changed the world, one conversation at a time. And, in the end, both she and Marcus Wellington learned the same essential truth. Dignity is not something you can buy or sell. It is something you choose to honor in yourself and others every single day, in every interaction, regardless of who is watching. That choice, repeated over and over, is what transforms individuals, organizations, and, eventually, the world. His position would do. But I also think he has a lot of work ahead of him. Unlearning a lifetime of bad behavior is not quick or easy. Are you glad you confronted him that night? Maya thought about this question carefully. I am glad I stood up for myself and for everyone else he had disrespected. I am glad it started conversations about how service workers are treated. I am glad it helped people like Richard find the courage to leave toxic situations. But I also think about how close I came to losing my job, how much stress it caused, how my life was invaded by strangers for weeks. If I could go back, would I do it again? She smiled. Yes, I would, because some things are worth the risk. The conversation at La Lumiere that night had changed both Maya and Marcus in profound ways. For Maya, it had proven that standing up for dignity and respect could create ripples that spread far beyond a single moment. For Marcus, it had been a wake-up call that forced him to examine his entire life and choose a different path. But the story was not finished yet. The real test of change is not how someone behaves when the world is watching, but what they do when no one is looking. And both Maya and Marcus were about to face situations that would test exactly what they had learned. Search for information about Maya Richardson, not looking for dirt this time, but simply trying to understand who she was. He found a small profile from her college newspaper, written when she had won a scholarship for academic excellence while working 2 jobs. He found a photo of her at a charity event, volunteering at a food bank. He found her in the background of someone else's photo, laughing with her brother at his high school graduation. She was not his enemy. She was not trying to destroy him. She was just someone who had reached her limit and refused to be silent. And the fact that her single act of courage had caused his empire to tremble said something profound about where true power actually resided. Wellington made a decision. It was not the decision his lawyers wanted. It was not the decision his PR team recommended. It was not even a decision he fully understood yet. But it was the first decision in a very long time that was not about money, power, or winning. He was going to find Maya Richardson, and he was going to talk to her. Not to intimidate her. Not to make her back down, but to understand what she had seen in him that night, and whether there was any part of him worth saving. Say that I have the best big sister in the world. He paused. I'm proud of you, Maya. I know that cost you a lot of courage. They talked for another 20 minutes about his engineering project, about whether he would come home this weekend, about what they should cook for dinner when he did. Normal things, family things, the kind of conversation that reminded Maya why she worked so hard in the first place. But the story was far from over. What Maya did not know yet was that the social media post Castellano had shown her was just the beginning. By that afternoon, the story had been picked up by a local news blog. By evening, it was trending on multiple platforms. Someone had recorded a video of part of the confrontation on their phone, and although the quality was poor and the audio muffled, it was enough to show Maya speaking calmly, while Marcus Wellington's face grew red with anger. The video was viewed over 1 million times in 24 hours. News stations started calling La Lumiere for comment. Reporters wanted to interview Maya. People she had never met were sending messages of support, sharing their own stories of standing up to workplace abuse or wishing they had the courage to do the same. Marcus Wellington's name began appearing in articles, not as a brilliant businessman, but as the rude billionaire who had been confronted by a brave waitress. His company's stock dipped slightly as social media users called for boycotts of his businesses. The court of public opinion had rendered its verdict, and, for once, wealth and power were not enough to control the narrative. But Wellington was not the type of man to accept public humiliation quietly. In his penthouse office overlooking Central Park, he sat with his team of lawyers and public relations experts, planning his response. If Maya Richardson thought she had won, she was about to learn that billionaires did not become billionaires by letting others challenge their authority. The real battle was just beginning, and neither Maya nor Marcus could predict how it would change both of their lives forever. She ignored him, keeping her eyes on Marcus. You can buy expensive meals, you can wear expensive suits, you can make people afraid of you because you have money. But money does not give you the right to treat people like they are worthless. I am not worthless. The chef is not worthless. We are human beings, and we deserve respect. The restaurant remained absolutely silent. Marcus Wellington stared at her, his face now completely red, a vein visible on his forehead. For a moment, she thought he might explode. Then, His expression changed to something colder and more dangerous. "Do you know who I am?" he said quietly. "Yes, sir. You are a customer who forgot that basic human decency is not something you can buy or refuse to tip for." Marcus turned to Gerald. "I want her fired. Immediately. If she is still employed here when I call tomorrow, I will make sure this restaurant suffers consequences." Gerald looked stricken. He glanced between Maya and Marcus, his career and his conscience clearly at war. "Mr. Wellington, please, fire her, or lose my business and my recommendations." Marcus pushed open the door and walked out into the rain, his remaining companions scurrying after him. The door closed. The spell broke. The restaurant erupted in noise. Some people began applauding. Others looked shocked. Gerald stood frozen, his face pale. Maya's hands were shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. She had just confronted one of the richest men in America. She had probably just lost her job, and she had no idea what would happen next. But for the first time in hours, she could breathe freely.